in his presentation today, there are new questions and issues, some of them quite interesting, that are being raised. And so I'll try to stick more or less close to my text, but also have some diversions and side tracks that seem appropriate. Let me begin with this reading from the Gospel according to Luke. "And I bestow upon you a kingdom, just as my Father bestowed upon me, that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom." And so my basic idea in this context of the Eucharist and peacemaking is that for the Eastern Orthodox, at least, faith and peacemaking are anchored in the Eucharist. That if you begin with a confession of faith, you end up at reconciliation and salvation, having passed through Eucharist on the way. Now, just a few words on terminology, because I think it bears on this issue of the Eastern Church versus the Western Church, or Roman Catholicism. The Latin word sacramentum, from which we get sacrament, originated out of the custom of a Roman soldier, when he became a part of the army, taking an oath. And so he was made sacred, that is, made part of the emperor's legions at that moment. Well, that was adapted or adopted by the Christian writer Tertullian to speak about baptism, saying, in essence, we are joining God's army at that moment. So it's like the sacramentation, if you will. But the Greeks of roughly the same period used the word mysterion, mystery. And this is a somewhat more comprehensive term than sacramentum, because it referred to everything having to do with Christ, all of his actions, his ministry, his teachings, and so on, as a part of the divine plan for our salvation that was kept secret until his coming. That is, was not fully revealed until the incarnation. And so, as John alluded to, I've held and posited in the things that we've sent back and forth that for Orthodoxy, sacredness is something which sort of operates on several levels at the same time. In one sense, everything is sacred, all of creation, as we apprehend it. We say God is everywhere and fills all things. On the other hand, we say that Christ was already, even while he lived on earth, a part of God's kingdom. That is, he was not of this world. And so there's this inbreaking of the sacred into the mundane. I won't say the profane, because we don't take creation to be evil or bad or nasty or dirty. But there is a movement, therefore, of humanity and of the church toward divinity. We say divinization. We use the phrase sometimes that God became man in order that man could become God. Now, this is not to say, that's kind of a shorthand. It's not to say that we ultimately are gods or become equal to God, but that we ultimately become one with God in a sense that is beyond what we can comprehend now. And so therefore, each person's journey going through life is to go from our limited, fallen, human way of perceiving things and of living to something that is more divine, more godly. And when we say with St. Leo the Great, our Redeemer has now passed into the sacraments. Note that he says not just the Eucharist, but all the sacraments. That is, everything about the church and about our human existence that is sacramentalized through Christ's coming and sacrifice. A word about the Orthodox Catholic distinction. You can see in the paper here, I've noted a couple of different places where the Roman Church uses terminology just that we wouldn't be comfortable with. And I wanted to note one thing in passing. When we say in our services and our prayers, one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, the holy, I think, is easy to parse, of God. Apostolic also treats the succession from the first disciples to the present leaders and members of the church. Catholic is a little bit more difficult. Often it's sort of translated as universal, and this is a kind of a meager statement of its meaning. I think it might be more accurate to say Catholic means that, as we see in the scriptures, where one or two of you is gathered in my name, there I am. That is to say, in any service, anywhere, in a mystical sense, the entire church is present. You don't have a piece of it here, a piece of it there, and the only time it's unified is when everybody comes to one place, which is never going to happen. But rather that if you perceive the church in one of its parts, you're seeing the church. And so, in a different sense than if you see my hand, you see all of me, it's more if you take a bit of DNA from my hand, you will get who I am. Because in every part of me, same DNA. Doesn't matter whether it's a hair, a toenail, a part of the stomach lining, or what have you. You're going to get the same code. And we say that, we are made in the image of God. And so, in one sense, it's like a blood type. We benefit from the transfusion that is the Holy Eucharist because we are of the same type as the God who made us. And I've said in the paper that in order to really understand what communion means in an Orthodox context, you have to take the whole process, which begins before we even get to church. That is, there is a process of preparation, of prayer, particularly the sacrament or the mystery of penitence, of confession. And this is essentially getting us to the point where we're ready to come to church and to approach the altar. We see in Matthew 5, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. And so that self-examination is to see, have we treated people badly? Have we been cruel? Have we harmed them? Before we are prepared to take communion. St. John Chrysostom said, if you cannot find Christ in the beggar at the church door, you will not find him in the chalice. And then when we start the liturgy, the first thing that happens is that the people come together. So in some sense, it is the assembly that's the beginning of the liturgy, not when the priest walks in. We use the term liturgy, liturgia, which is the work of